Namaste and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth, the study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. Sattology actually builds your identity, whereas mythology actually destroys your identity. The the word Sattology was not there. It is created using the same etymological rules like mythology. I have a very special guest today. He's chartered accountant or like a CPA in the US, public accountant. So let us welcome Sumeet Mehta.
Namaste. Thank you very much, Aditya ji, for inviting me to your show.
You're very welcome. So, Sumit ji, the world is like crying on decolonization and also de-dollarization in a big way. A lot of changes we can see. And I am lately seeing that a large amount of videos coming out by various news organizations, whether it's in Canada or United States, where they are actually talking about the fear of dollar losing its reserve status. Now, from India, Dr. Ankit Shah did a wonderful job in pioneering this concept because very few people spoke about de-dollarization before him globally. Not just I was searching the Google, he's one of the first ones to put it out. Now, tell me one thing, like now it is becoming a rage in US. What do you think that in the from the Indian perspective, how they look American economy and the American, well, rather I'd say the American military backed economy. How do they view India like that right now?
See, even now, US continues to be the engine for global growth, economic growth. And India looks upon it from a perspective because we are largely dependent upon US for exports. Rather, US is the only country with whom we have a trade surplus. Unlike China, where we are running a trade deficit of around 40, $50 billion. Against that, US is where we are running a significantly big trade surplus. Be it on the trade side with chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and others, or on the services side with IT exports and IT services, and largely even the tourism revenues. So US continues to be a anchor for economic growth in India till a alternate model develops. And in the current setup, even China is dependent upon US. If US imports decline significantly, then even China is in a problem. So US continues to be an engine for global economic growth. Be it India, be it China, be it one or other countries. And EU thereafter follows as a support engine. Of course, EU is facing a much larger problem, but US, India looks upon it as a real driver of growth in India. Tangible revenues, be it in form of IT exports, ITES exports, or tourism revenues. Repatriation is also a big amount which is coming. Of course, I cannot say that is extremely huge. We are getting around, 300 billion rupees or a bit more than that from US. Against that, the kind we are spending in terms of expenditure of Indian students studying in Europe and America is around, you know, 3 trillion rupees. So, there is a big problem, imbalance within India when it comes to the education. People are aspiring for the the great American, which I don't know to continue how long.
Your voice is getting very muffled.
Okay, is it clear now?
Better now, better.
Okay, so how long a great American dream would continue, only God knows.
Same
But
problem, Sumit ji, sorry to interrupt you. Same problem.
okay, okay, now is it clear? Because I think there could be a problem with the speaker. Sorry, with the mic, I think. I'm afraid. Is it okay now, or there's still a problem?
Yeah, it is okay. Yes.
Okay. So that we will have to see, but India also continues to remain one of the largest financier or supporter of the American education institutions in terms of sponsoring students' expenditure in US and of course including the West, which is largely UK, to the tune of around 3 trillion rupees. So that's huge. But till US continues for quite some time, I think US will be having a respectable influence on the Indian economy. especially in the trade sector and in the investment sector. That is my personal view about America.
Now, if you look at the African Union and other countries like who are actually uh, openly now questioning the colonial side of it and how the economy and the trade has been done throughout the world using a military threat. If you
Very
don't
true.
trade, and India also has faced significant arm twisting by Americans over the
Very
years.
true. Very
Over the
true.
years.
Rather, if you see that, this is neocolonialism. Post World War II uh, world order was the world order which was dominated or determined by the US, and it started with first is giving independence to the colonies. But did many of the colonies become really independent? Many went into the US camp or the capitalist camp, some went into the Soviet camp or the communist camp, ruled by dictators, uh, frequent coups. And what was the intent, be it of US or even the Soviet Union, was to exploit the resources, exploit the people of those countries. Even now, we see many countries do have puppet governments which are controlled by US. India has faced arm twisting on various fronts, be it in form of human rights, be it in form of religious freedom, be it in form of any other issues. Wherever they want, they can twist it, even animal rights for that matter, or children rights. A whole carpet industry in India is not allowed to grow because of nearly 5 to 6,000 crore rupees. That is, 50 billion, 60 billion rupees, just because they don't want imports, and they have very conveniently said that it is child labor is involved. So they have all the means, and which is what they call as the rule-based order, in which they have played around with everyone. And of course, Africa has been on the worst receiving end, exploited to the core, unable to even build up the resources for themselves or even alleviate the hunger and poverty of the people over there. So this, I call it, colonialism 2.0 or neo-colonialism, wherein democracy is only a farce. It is only a facade. We believe that we are a democratic country, but we are indirectly or directly a colony of US. Democracy, it's just that we get the pleasure of voting a person. That's it.
Interestingly, you mentioned the rules-based order. Now, if you look at the American think tanks, and sometimes I say in joke, "सोचने का कुआं." So the American think tanks often say the rules-based order is as per the Western world's rules-based order. Means we set up the rules and you follow the order. That's the rules-based order. And India has been demanding through Global South the equivalency, like or equality in terms of nations, and saying that everyone has a right to choose their partners, because in the rules-based order you cannot choose any other partner other than the West. And that's how they have done in 1800s, they have done in 1900s, and they could do a lot in early 2000s also. Now it is changing significantly and very fast. So what is the future of rules-based order, the Western rules-based order versus the order, the international order?
See, the rules-based order, which probably started in the post-World War era, or rather, to some extent, we can uh, draw the inspiration. Rather, this whole institution, the idea of rules-based order goes back to the Treaty of Westphalia, 1648, and the idea of balance of power. But over a period of time, as and when US started getting more dependent upon petrodollars and oil imports, controlling the Middle East to ensure the hegemony of dollars, and more importantly, post the Cold War era, when it became the de facto leader, because then it was a unipolar world, the things have deteriorated. And with that, I believe that the rules-based order is now just a word, because it has been twisted, it has been twirled, it has been distorted to the extent that now we don't know what rules-based order really means. The way America has been, or even the West for that matter, European Union was negotiating on a trade deal with China last year, 2022. what happened? Suddenly they aborted the transaction, the whole negotiation on the basis of human rights. So my question is, were they sleeping for nearly half a century when China invaded Tibet, when China ran such a huge massacre at Tiananmen Square, when they were oppressing Uyghur Muslims? Suddenly, why the conscience of the people in power, the elites in power in European Union suddenly came out of hibernation and they aborted the transaction? Very big question. So this whole thing is about convenience, that where we want to arm twist a country, we'll twist, we will negotiate, we'll call off the transactions or negotiations in the name of human rights, in the name of animal rights, or God knows what all rights. And, we'll use that to our advantage. That is what they are even trying to do with India. Look at UK. UK is using all the tactics to arm twist India to sign a FTA with UK, which is not at all in the interest of India. It will be totally in the interest of UK, so that UK can repeat whatever happened in 1932, the Ottawa Conference, wherein they can indirectly plunder the colonies. Ottawa Conference of 1932 was also to plunder the colonies. Now, it is colonialism is not by sending armies, it is about sending representatives and getting their people elected so that they can run the country. So, my personal view is that this whole thing is going to be out. And with the US withdrawal in Afghanistan, first thing is US military has lost, people have lost fear uh, in military. That is the US military establishment. So you can defend a currency only with a strong military. And that is what US has done since 1970s. They provided protection to the Arab states. Against that, they ensured that oil trade happens in dollars. They eliminated Saddam Hussein. They eliminated Muammar Gaddafi, only to ensure that petro trade does not move out of US dollars. Now you are seeing a whole new world order slowly and steadily emerging. Rather, Ray Dalio, the US thinker and investor, has also written about it extensively in his book. And it is very clear that now China is trading with Saudi in yuan. China is trading with Iran in its own currency. People are moving away from dollars. We are trading with Russia in rupee. But US dollar will continue to remain a strong and an international currency because they are also one of the largest importers. But having said that, I think as and when countries start going into bilateral treaties instead of multilateral treaties, see, US dollar will be a currency for all the transactions when it is a multilateral trade deal, say like the Trans-Pacific Treaty or Trans-Pacific Partnership or all those kind of treaties. There, how do you settle accounts? So you will need US dollar. But if India is independently transacting with Russia, if India is independently transacting with Saudi or UAE or Iran, will automatically have a rupee real or a rupee ruble or a rupee dirham transactions, in which the focus will shift from dollar to either of the two currencies of either of the two partners. And that will be slowly the result, that will lead to the end of dollar in international trade. That is my view. Dollar is on its way out. Maybe it will take 10, 15, 20 years, but dollar is on its way out.
I mean, that is what is rattling everybody because all the wars so far the Americans have fought is that is over the protecting the US dollars. That's what they've done, Libya and many other places. And they have also sacrificed their own people to protect that. So one CIA faction has fought with another CIA faction. I mean, the movies are not wrong. Some of the Hollywood movies are damn like absolutely right. Some
No,
of
it
them,
is quite unfortunate because in the name of instilling democracy or saving democracy, we have seen, the world has seen what happened to Iraq, what has happened to Syria, what has happened to Libya. Okay, we know what has happened to Afghanistan. It is plundered like anything. People have been killed, people have been maimed, they've lost everything. Why? Because America wanted to install its idea of democracy. Now, what is that idea of democracy? I think nobody has understood till date because there is no tangible example on the ground. And I'm thankful that India does not have oil. If India had a trillion barrels of oil, then probably US Marines would have been in India to save Indian democracy.
you know, I don't know which Congress history. I have not don't have the data, but I was hearing, and uh, you can correct me. You can comment here and let me know the statistics. Actually, one U.S. Congress had the mandate of only 9% of Americans, and I don't know which Congress is that. Which, if you can search it, let me know. Another Congress had the mandate of only 30% of Americans, and it has happened a couple of times. And recently, I was hearing the Mexican president quoting that the real democracy has moved out of US long back, and the oligarchs are ruling the US. Now, that's the same charge made by Bernie Sanders as well. And Bernie Sanders is very popular amongst the youth. In fact, many of our students they love him. And whether it's socialism or what it is there. I don't have any position on that. I'm neither left nor right. We are in the middle, dharmic. So the thing is, the people have quoted in that way. Now, if I look at the Indian elections, then the Prime Minister Modi is the only prime minister or only leader of the country in the world to have gotten more than 800 million votes in his entire career. So, which is a phenomenal, like nobody can, I mean, American president would wish to have that kind of mandate. And, but still we see that the Indian government only reacts, doesn't take proactive action. When the world looks for leadership, they are looking at India, but they don't see any strong steps. Because I think the world usually watches too many Hollywood movies. Real world probably moves in a different way. So, what is your view on that?
See, India has been a real democracy since day zero. And if we have to start dating the day zero, then it is probably 5000 BC, when the Western civilization did not really exist. In real terms, they did not have a civilization. We read in history that the democracy started in Athens, the Athenian Revolution. And that led to the whole system of elections and democracy and republicanism coming in the West, or rather, from there it spread. Even UK in 13th century, it became a democratic country, though it is a constitutional monarchy. So democracy from that perspective. But India was a democracy long before that. Ashtadhyayi, written by Panini, discusses about the republics and the method of electing the representatives, and this is dated way back to 4500 BC. That is 2000 years even before Athenian revolution started. So we don't need lessons in democracy. Second thing is, look at the methodology in which the elections are conducted in India. A free and fair election where we directly elect in a very transparent manner a representative who, and we of course have a Westminster model. So the elected representatives then go and elect the prime minister. However, elections, when we look at India, many people don't know the name of the representatives, the member of parliament. They don't know the party. They say that we are voting for Modi ji. Modi ji, G means out of respect when we address someone, we add G after his name. So it is Modi ji, respected Narendra Modi. We are voting for him. There are many people say that we don't know anything. We don't know the name of the person. So many places, people have voted for a BJP or an alliance candidate. And very unfortunately, even the Shiv Sena, MPs who got elected and then defected with Uddhav Thackeray, they all won elections only because of Modi's name. So and look at our system. We have a EVM which is very transparent. Although all the allegations have been made that they can be hacked and everything, but that lies being spread. And these are exactly the kind of lies which even Lenin spread after he lost the elections into 1917, and then he went ahead to rebel against the elected mandate of the people to grab power. Okay, what they very gloriously call as the Bolshevik Revolution or the October Revolution, which is nothing but it is denying the will of the people, the then Russian or the Soviet people, to grab power. Okay, and that is what they did try in India, but it failed because nobody wanted to come on the streets to oppose the election. Look at the way counting is done, very transparent. You look at the American method. You have instances where the cases have been filed in the Supreme Court against the verdict, and the counting has been questioned. The ballot boxes have been questioned, ballot boxes have been missing, and everything has happened. Kind of manipulation you all sitting in US know better than we in India, because we read it in the mainstream media and US newspapers to understand what is happening. There is no such case in India. It was happening in India in the 60s, 70s, 80s, in Bihar and UP and all those bad lands of, but now it is not possible. So we are a much better democracy. We know the voters identity card is linked with the identity card of the social security card in India, which is called as Aadhaar. We are able to vote more transparently, more easily. Our vote does count, which does not happen in US. So I think US should not give lessons on and sermons on democracy to people who are rather the forefathers of democracy in the ancient to the modern civilization.
Well, democracy, the Athenian democracy was rejected by many people, including Plato and Socrates also. Sorry, the Aristotle also rejected it, and he
Hmm.
brought out a concept of constitutional republic.
Hmm.
So Athenian democracy was rejected, and therefore most of the American think tanks, सोचने का कुआं, they always call America as a constitutional republic nowadays. They don't call it a democracy. So
Hmm.
democracy is exported, but not practiced. I mean, which we can see that most of the appointments in the major categories. I mean, this Biden administration has been a little bit different, but in a very haphazard way. I mean, in a very skin conscious way, which is not the right place way to do it. Now, coming to the next question on the military side of it, I am seeing that the US military budget is almost $858 billion. And people, 350 million people, having a security budget of $858 billion, which is a lot of money in terms of real money right now, if you see the reserve status. How do you see that continuing? Because with the de-dollarization and other things, it looks like I had no idea about this subject before Ankit touched it, but now I've researched more. It looks like the more people are the US government is making money by the fact of US dollar being the predominant international currency. So they make part of it in every single transaction in the world. What do you see the future of US military?
See, US military will have to continue because they have been the engines of economic growth, whatever it be, in terms of the kind of taxpayers' money which is getting diverted to the defense companies. The money could be used for better uses, be it building housing for the poor, or providing them food or any other good work. But it is used to only fight wars. Why? Because the public money is transferred. Rather, that is what I read somewhere, that it is about socializing loss and privatizing profits. So, the taxpayers' money is siphoned and diverted into the private hands uh, through the military-industrial complex. And I think they will have to continue, because when the economy goes, see, US had a luxury. Whenever they wanted anything, they just could print dollars, or they could just issue US treasury bills, and they could import anything, they could consume everything. In the process, they have created a $1 trillion, nearly 900 plus billion, that is $1 trillion credit card loan bubble. Today or tomorrow it has to burst. When it will burst, we don't know. But excessive spending to continue the consumption driven economy. Where is production driven economy? Only pharmaceuticals, only defense. Where is the other production over there? They have outsourced everything to China. They are dependent on China for everything from that pin to plane. Everything they are dependent on China, except for a few things that they manufacture in house. So this cannot sustain for long. My personal view is this cannot sustain as things go forward. And US has not won any war except for the Gulf War of 91, 92 against Saddam Hussein. Other than that, they have not won any war. Look at the Vietnam War. Look at all the other wars. They have not won anywhere. Afghanistan is again, a very shameful episode in the history, military history, I can say. And same is the case when they were withdrawing from Saigon. We know that US aircraft carriers had to throw away the helicopters and the planes to, uh, create space for the US officials, the Marines and the other military officials and their families. So I think US will continue it. It is a war-driven economy. Earlier, they had a luxury in the Cold War era. They had a luxury of making two countries fight so that Soviet Union, the erstwhile Soviet Union and the America could sell weapons and earn money. Now they have lost that luxury, so they have to send their armies everywhere. And young people getting killed in Afghanistan, body bags going back to US. What can be a more a painful thing for any family or for any neighborhood if they are only sending the young men and receiving them back in body bags. This cannot continue, as slowly and steadily every country is also becoming dependent on other countries for defense. India is becoming one of the fastest growing exporter of defense equipments. Israel is also growing fast. Russia, of course, continues to be a very strong exporter in defense space. Other countries will come up. So dominance of US will slowly start declining. I foresee that American defense companies will start looking at exploring investment opportunities in India, and they will shift their bases to India because US cannot sustain for long in this market.
So if I ask you another question, like for example, like African Union questioning American democracy, the Middle East is threatening to put sanctions on US. Like Saudi Arabia said it, we can put sanctions on US for meddling in internal affairs. And the Americans know that their real ambassador in India is CENTCOM chief, the military head of central operations. Ambassador is just an order carrier, or ambassador only follows the orders of their intelligence agencies. So this is how the American diplomacy works. And the world over, the diplomacy is run by the civilians, because when the US raises a bogey that you're interfering in our affairs for Russia or China, they say it. But American social media platforms are everywhere in every country. Like in India, like virtually a Google will know where every citizen is moving. Literally, they know. So how is that the world thinks, and especially India and other places, that they are free because uh, their data is being used by Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Everybody is American corporation, and their data. And as per American laws, we can actually see the data completely. So how do you see that happening with the social media?
See, social media has created a awareness and people have started understanding what the reality is. And that is why we are seeing a lot of discussion on data, Indian data to be domiciled in India. They are talking about data storage in India, and that is going to become a big thing. They cannot move the data from India to outside India. And I believe slowly and steadily, uh, US is not in a position to influence Indian population and Indian elections. Look at what has happened. Rahul Gandhi, the leader of the opposition party, that is Congress, the grand old party of India, he went to London and he spoke about why US and Europe are not sanctioning India. And what was the reaction? When George Soros came out to speak against the Indian democracy and spoke about the Indian industrialist named Mr. Gautam Adani, what was the reaction in India? There was a pushback to the extent that in case of George Soros, the opposition parties had to come out and say that we don't want George Soros to interfere into Indian democracy and India, and we are capable enough to handle. Why? They had to make that statement because they were branded as puppets of George Soros, and it was becoming very difficult for them to detach themselves from George Soros. So this is not a good sign for the uh, deep state sitting in Washington, D.C., who would like to control India through all the weapons like IT, big tech. Today, what you have said is right. We a lot of data with them where we are traveling, Google Maps, even mobile phones are holding data, and it is not just about US. It is also China who is holding data, and even Korea and Taiwan and all Korea holding data. So be it Samsung and everything. So my view is that over a period of time, with more awareness, more transparency coming in, US will lose that control over India. They are just teaching. But yeah, coming back to the most important question, that is Africa. The African Union is now waking up. First thing is, COVID was one big lesson for the world when Pfizer and the US government wanted to sell vaccines to earn money. And that was the time when Prime Minister Modi went a step ahead and said that we'll get into what is called as vaccine Maitri. Maitri means friendship. And he, invoked the Indic idea, the Hindu idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That means the whole world is my family, which is now also the theme for the G20 summit, which India is chairing in India. Okay. So we supported the global south in a very positive manner. We provided them free vaccines. We provided even food to many countries. We provided oxygen concentrators and other facilities to various African countries. Today, world has realized, see, now it is on record that what US tried. US tried to give a few, maybe a dozen vaccines free, and they wanted to sell vaccine and earn money. Against that, India was giving vaccines in huge quantities free of cost to the whole world, rather to the whole of global south. Even now, we go ahead. Before the G20 summit started, India hosted the Global South conference and engaged with the global south to understand what are their aspirations, what can G20, the biggest 20 countries in the world, the 20 biggest economies on the world, can do for the global south. Till now, no such initiative has been taken. So India is slowly replacing Europe and US as the de facto leader of global south. Rather, the first time global south is coming together under the benevolent leadership instead of a exploitative leadership, is the benevolent leadership of India under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. This is the first time they are finding support when they are facing the debt trap diplomacy by China, when they are facing the market exploitation by Europe and America. The only ray of hope is India, where India is providing them with support to become Atmanirbhar or self-dependent instead of using the opportunity to exploit them.
India's vaccine diplomacy has been appreciated a lot, which I can see that it has a lot of world acceptance of Indian vaccine diplomacy during COVID, and also India's support to food for many countries, including Sri Lanka and other countries, has been widely appreciated, including Afghanistan for that matter. That India has supplied food to even Afghanistan and Iran too. Iran too.
Even medicines,
Medicine.
Afghanistan, we have provided medicines, we have provided food, and you know, probably while there can be a very extremist regime over there in form of Taliban, that is why the Sikh brothers have been forced to leave the country and close down their gurudwaras and seek refuge in India. But we have humanitarian basis, because Taliban may represent the extreme form of Islam, but India has also taken into cognizance that there are poor Afghan people who have nothing to do with extremism or militant or terrorism. What is their fault? And that is what has been taken into cognizance when we supplied food and medicines to them. Aditya ji, I'm done.
Yeah. Just. So one last question. Actually, there's a delay in the internet here. The one last question is that if the what is the role of Global South and BRICS in a new international world order, not just Western rules-based order?
See, Western rules-based order is now on its way out, because that has been distorted and destroyed. It has not been of any help to any country, including the US. US is now a oligarchy. We, of course, blame the Russian oligarchs and the Chinese oligarchs, but nobody talks about the American oligarchs who control the wealth, and people are left to fend off for themselves. That is out. We are looking at a new world order. BRICS, Global South is the way in. Africa has to become more prosperous. Africa has resources. South Asia, Southeast Asia has resources. Latin America has resources. These are the countries which will grow. The population is in only two largest countries, that is India and China, which should be the driver of growth. We cannot have a very blinded consumerism wherein people keep on borrowing and borrowing only to spend money so that the economy continues to grow. There's a need for balance, a need between desires and renunciation of desires. What we can call as the dharmic capitalism. Dharmic capitalism is not about abstaining from everything and giving away everything, but it is about enjoying but understanding that what is it where I should stop. In US, there is no limit. There is no understanding that there has to be an end to the thing. It is ati sarvatra varjayet. Excess of anything is bad. And that is the underlying of the current rules-based order, which is going to end. Africa, India, BRICS, because BRICS is going to be, see, look at BRICS nations. Collectively, they have a larger GDP than, maybe the second and the third largest economy put together. So what does it mean?
No, it's the
It
largest. It's the largest.
So that
BRICS
is
is the
what it what
largest.
so we the economy is shifting. See, the Western order is over. Now it is the Oriental age of Orientalism. Be it Africa of the East or the Asia in the East. That is where the future of the world lies. Even in terms of population, we are the one. So I think that is where the future is.
You see, the American innovation is run on technology and new researches. And I don't think so. The Western, that kind of infrastructure or the capacity to produce new things is there in the BRICS nations so far. I mean, we have not seen the kind of innovation anywhere. It is a follow-up act. Like the most of the BRICS nations don't manufacture planes. We don't see them manufacturing any the public utilities like the technologies of the West. Many of them are not there. Secondly, you mentioned about the new this Asian bloc. One of the things which is also not existing is unity. Is not existing. Education system like Europeanism has spread so much fake knowledge about history, about every single continent from the colonial perspective, from their perspective. We have not seen that effectively happening because most of the BRICS nations don't forcibly convey or they don't have the researches to convey the right version of history. So these things are seriously lacking. And these things actually drive the economy.
I agree with you. Rather, only area where I agree is that we are not seeing that in India. But look at China. China has not allowed the access of American ideas and American education system into their country. They still, they look upon their own ancient knowledge systems to inspire people. They have Confucius institutes which are running across the world, and they are part of the whole ecosystem to further the larger dream of a greater China. We lack that. India does lack it. Russia doesn't have a baggage of Americanism or the Western baggage, we can say. The three largest and the strongest countries, the third is India. And what you have observed is correct for India because we are still dependent upon the Western method of education, which only creates serfs or which only creates plebeians who will be working on the shop floors. We have, we don't have anything to claim our own. We are working on imported ideas, and that has to change.
You also mentioned dharmic capitalism. Now, capitalism itself is a negative word. We know that it creates a very small amount of rich people. Capitalism is a system to protect the riches of a few, a few. And whenever the society runs on that, it's going to collapse, which we are seeing in the USA because extreme capitalism leads to extreme communism. Karl Marx is the communistic theory is the opposite of capitalism, and that is post-capitalism actually. The Arthashastra talks about balance, like the state has to be socially beneficial to the all classes of people. And so distribution of wealth is an important part of Arthashastra in a different way, like in terms of the taxes being distributed, the state being taking care of the financials and the defense of the state or expanding the boundaries. But the dharmic part of it, which is not part of capitalism.
No,
Capitalism
I
is only
disagree with you.
dollars. Yeah.
I respectfully disagree. Rather, a few days ago, I was in a city and I had to visit. I was in Pune, to be very honest, and I had to go to a grain market to meet someone. And on the way back, within a periphery of around half a kilometer on both the sides of the markets, on all the roads, All the banks had their branches, and every branch, every account would be worth crores. The idea of dharmic capitalism is where wealth is as distributed as possible. So it is not one person who controls the whole of the wealth of the country or the market. You compare it with, say, US. We have not seen a other company other than Microsoft. We have not seen another company other than Google. Why? Because there's only one. You look at India, there are so many people, such a huge competition. And to be very frank, I agree with you. Acharya Vishnugupta, that is Chanakya, wrote in Arthashastra that the state has the responsibility for the people. So state was a benevolent state, authoritative state, which also ensured that there is welfare of the people. It was a welfare state, but at the same time, it promoted entrepreneurship, it promoted distribution of wealth, it promoted the ability of a person to uh, achieve his dreams. You look at Indian economy, we were supplying the best of the muslin for the to Egypt, which were used for the wrapping of for wrapping the mummies. We were supplying the best of the muslin and the garments and everything to Rome, to the extent that Rome had to stop the import of luxury goods from India because they were running short of gold and silver, against which they had to buy all the goods. So we were a capitalist country, but our capitalism was based on the idea that we will not exploit anyone, we will not try to kill people, we will not try to maim people. Giving you an example, Dhaka's muslin. What happened? British cut the hands and the thumbs of the people, the fingers and the thumbs of the people who were running the handlooms, so that British textiles can be exported in India. The British cloth can be sold in India. We have never done that. So our idea of capitalism is where we allow everybody to become an entrepreneur, allow everyone to become rich. And we have texts where it is written that a particular trader was richer than the king, and he used to do all the welfare for the people, or he has done charities. So India had a capitalism. India believed in free trade, but it was not absolute free trade in the licensed fair manner. There was a state which was controlling everything. Acharya Vishnugupta has been very clear about the way land can be transacted. We have, of course, forgotten that, and we have converted everything into a very distorted way. But Acharya Vishnugupta was very clear what how a king can give land, and what is the right. Can land be freely traded or not? When the state has the right to take over the land. If land was given for cultivation, it cannot be converted into a farmhouse or something else. It had to be used for cultivation. Otherwise, the state will take it back and give it to another person who wants to do farming. That is not happening right now, even in India for that matter. So I would say that Indian or the Bharati or the Dharmic capitalism has completely different traits. It is non-exploitative compared to the Western capitalism, which is exploitative.
No, the I'm just going with the word capitalism. Capitalism word itself, just the word capitalism. Capitalism word itself means Punjivad.
Mhm.
Punjivad is a very shallow concept. Like if you
Punjivad, again, the word is because see, we will have to invent another word to describe what is Indic or the Bharatiya or the Dharmic way of creating wealth. What is the way?
capital means Punji, and
Yes.
capitalism is vad, means just a term. Ism is always a English word. Ism is anywhere we put a ism means it's not real. Like
Mm,
it's a created one.
mm. No, we'll have to create a new word so that a word or a terminology to move away. But per se, when we look at it, look at say in first century BC or even later up to
Like
16th
I'll just
century,
add
17th.
one reference to you for Mahabharata.
Mm,
Punjivad is the thing which is controlled by the state, so that the punji doesn't goes in one place or the more. Like is a It has to be controlled. Otherwise, the equitable distribution of wealth doesn't happen. I'm not saying about communism where everything belongs to the state. In Arthashastra, the thing is Ishavasyam. Everything belongs to Ishwar, and everyone is serving Ishwar. That's a different concept altogether. That's dharmic. But the and also the I will also correct every myself also that we worship Lakshmi Narayan. We worship not only Lakshmi, but we also worship Narayan, because without Purushartha, you cannot set, and for the pleasure of Haritoshanam. There's many references there. Some Siddhi Haritoshanam. There are like a lot of references there. that the when the economy or the state works for Hari, then it becomes dharmic. So the Varnashram works for Hari, that exists for Hari. So now, like that is a traditional concept, in which Chanakya has not touched it. Chanakya said that's the way it should go. But the capitalism means removing God from every single aspect. Now, God is a European word. Hari from every single aspect. So that's what my point was. But
But
anyway,
that will not work. See, even Acharya Vishnu Gupta talked about Trahi, which also include Vedas. So the whole thing was based on the Vedas. Artha Shastra, when in the first few shlokas or itself, he is talking about Trahi, which is the Vedas and the other things. Also, when we look at the Indian ancient thinking process or the systems, it is the Anvinshiki, the way we think. And Acharya Vishnu Gupta was very clear about what is the objectives. It is about welfare of the people. It is about the growth of the people. It is about happiness. He has gone to the extent of even what can be done, what cannot be done, what kind of pleasures can be exploited, what cannot be exploited, what is the role of a human being towards the society, what is the way a human being should be living in a society. He has talked about everything. It is not just about economics or statecraft. He's talked about the public morality as well, which probably people are not talking about right now. And probably that is why we are losing out. And in the West, I can say there is no role of the people, the relationship between people and the society, or the role of the relationship between a person and another person. What is the public morality? Those things are not, there is nothing on that. You open Anvinshiki, you will get a lot of things on this in Indian ancient text, but we don't find that in any Western text. So Western text, the money is devoid of the principles and the foundations and the root of civilizational ethos, humanitarian values, and all those, which is why the capitalism in the West has got very exploitative. India in 15th, 16th century, we had 17% of the population and 34% of the global GDP. How could India be so prosperous? Only and only because there was distribution of wealth. If wealth is concentrated at one level, then the country slowly starts becoming poorer and poorer. And that is what
true.
happened during the British rule, or it is happening in US and US right now, because the money is in very few hands. And that is why we are seeing the slowdown in economy. That was never the case in India.
In whatever you call it, oligarchy or capitalism or something, but we know that the majority of the US is poor now, majority. And the few
Yes.
people are calling the shots, which have the money. And they are the ones who make money on every single crisis which the US creates or is created by them, their interests. You know. So thank you so much Ji, for coming on the show today and had a very lively discussion. And do you want to add anything which you want to say something? Because I think
No,
you
I think I have done. Maybe we can discuss more ideas later in the next show.
yeah. Thank you very much. And for the viewers, do like, share, subscribe, and also don't forget to join San Diego Lit Fest, Krishna Lit Fest in San Diego on August 25 and 26. Is going to be big, very big. Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you.